Hopefully, we can all agree that managing customer expectations is the most important part of running a business. And turning customer expectation into advocacy is a near impossible task. Having customers go from saying, "So impress me," to "How do we get the word out about our product," gives you a real sense of accomplishment. So if you want to know the secret weapon to turning customers into brand advocates, then we've got just the expert for you. Michelle Datilio, founder and owner of Soch. Michelle, welcome to the Subscription Maker Impact.
Thank you. That's great. It's really great to be here. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk about all things marketing, including advocacy.
Let's start with what is brand advocacy and why is it so important?
Sure. So, brand advocacy is actually a stage in the buyer's journey. And we could talk a little bit more about the full buyer's journey later on, but it's happens after decision. So, after someone's chosen to be your customer, the end goal then is to take them to the level of advocacy. So, what we would like is for our brand advocates to do our marketing for us. At the end of the day, it's word of mouth marketing, which is something that's been around since the beginning of time. But you have to really work to build brand advocates. It's not something that just happens overnight. It takes time, just like any other relationship. But it's extremely rewarding because really, when we make our purchasing decisions, hearing from people that we know and trust helps us to make those purchasing decisions. So, advocacy is one of the most important stages of the buyer's journey, but it does take time and effort to get there.
Okay, so how do we identify brand advocates? I mean, do they look different? Do they sound different? Do they act different? How does that work?
Well, yes, they do kind of look different, sound different, act different. So, a brand advocate, if it's happening naturally, which is really kind of the way you want to just start, the brand advocate's the person out there talking about your brand. They're the one that uh, they're the cheerleader, right? They bought your product or service and they fully believe in who you are and what you do, and now they want to tell everyone about it. So a lot of times the way you'll hear about brand advocates will be just by being on social media, and you'll hear people talking about you, and you'll be able to really connect with and hopefully build those relationships. Or you'll have people come in saying, well, this person told me about you, or this person told me about you. It's kind of through the referrals. And you'll start to be able to identify those people because they're a little bit louder than your average customer. They really want to shout your message from the rooftop. They also tend to be, depending on what industry you're in, they could very much tend to be early adopters. So they're the type of person who likes to be seen as a thought leader. And when they're really happy with your product or service, they're going to be out there talking about it because they want to share this information with their friends. So identifying them is a little bit actually easier than building them and growing them, but you can really find them by just seeing who's talking about you and what they're saying.
So, what are the challenges that struggling companies face when they try to recruit brand advocates?
There are a couple of big challenges with brand advocates. So, one, just the organization of the advocates. So, what we'll do is we'll come in and we'll start to create lists and spreadsheets, and then from there, it's really how do you grow the advocacy? So, it's about building a relationship. This takes a lot of time and effort because you're having back and forth communications with advocates or potential advocates to try to get them to a point where they're actually advocating for your brand. They're different from influencers because you're not paying them necessarily, but you are likely rewarding them. I think the easiest thing for a lot of people to maybe relate to is when you go to your favorite restaurant, even if you're in a small town, and because you know the owner, because you're there all the time, the owner or the wait staff, they make sure that you get seated first because they know that you're an advocate. So you have to nurture the relationships. And then as an advocate, you're going out and you're talking to people saying, oh, you have to go to this restaurant or you have to try this product. But really what you need to do is nurture that relationship like you would any other. And that does take time and effort. But the nice thing about it is once it's nurtured, and if you continue to nurture the relationship, um, those advocates take over a lot of the marketing for you because they're out talking for you. And beyond that, if you ever have a problem, say if something goes wrong, say going back to the restaurant example, say there's one night where just they're short staffed and it's just a terrible experience, you've got an advocate out there actually speaking for you on your behalf. And we've had this with major brands where something has gone terribly wrong. And because we have um, built these advocates, the advocates are out there saying, whoa, 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 yeah, they made a mistake, but this is just one little mistake. And, everyone makes a mistake. So you really want to nurture these voices in your community once you've identified them, and you nurture them by, sometimes it's behind the scenes viewing, sometimes it's, if it's a restaurant, it's, hey, this meal's on the house, or we used to send handwritten notes and keychains and hats. It doesn't need to be this big gesture. It just needs to be a very simple thank you and acknowledging of the advocate and what they do for your brand.
So what kind of time frame are we looking at? I mean, in the
Mm,
SaaS world, we talk about time to or TTV, time to value.
yeah.
So what are we looking at? I mean, everybody knows time is money. So how does that work?
Well, this is going to vary by vertical. And I always use the example of face cream because I'm a female and I'll be on Instagram and I'll see different lotions and face creams. And I can go very quickly from awareness, which is the first step of the buyer's journey, to decision, which is the third step. And if I really like the product that I buy, then I go to advocate very quickly. If you're talking about something different, a bigger product, um, that might be a little bit longer time period because there's more involved with having someone get to decision phase and then having someone get to the point where they can advocate for the product, especially when you're talking about like in the SaaS industry, like you have a learning curve, right? If I bring on a new piece of software or something, unless it's working for me so well immediately that I'm telling everyone to use it, there is time to get there. And then beyond that, you have to, once you have the customer that's super satisfied, you have to identify them and grow the relationship. So it's not an overnight thing, but what I tell people is it's a long-term investment that actually continues to work for years and years and years. It's almost like compounding interest, right? So it takes time to build, but it also lasts longer. It's not a flash in the pan tactic, and it's very much worthwhile.
Yeah, I guess what I'm getting or hearing from you is, one of the things you get from when people start to talk about customer service, and they start to talk about how you really need to play that up. Someone else can come to town and they people will leave. You can give them the best service in the world and they will leave because it's a new restaurant.
Mhm.
But it sounds like your brand advocates are the ones that stick around and help you win those people back. Am I on the right track there?
Exactly. And so I think that, like, going back to the restaurant example, yeah, of course, people are on occasion going to try a new restaurant, but they still have their favorites. And um, building loyalty, which is a big part of brand advocacy, is very important. And that's not just, the customer service. It's starting with having a good product or service. It's acknowledging mistakes when they happen because we all make mistakes. And it's treating your customers with respect and kindness. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to potentially lose customers. That does happen. But the goal is that you want the people, those advocates out there, constantly talking about who you are and what you're doing. So um, it's a relationship building tactic, and when done well and right, it works. And yeah, people do try new things, but they come back to the tried and true because they're happier with the quality of the product or service, or they're happier with the way that they're being treated, or so many different things. And um it's like I said, it's an investment, but it's very worthwhile.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit. So back in the day, there used to be this comic book called a comic strip called Calvin and Hobbes. And one of them would ask a question or say something, and they would be trapped and an existential bubble. Okay, that's where we are now. So let's continue on and maybe we'll find our way out. Michelle, what does it mean to be a fractional CMO?
Mhm. So for me, fractional CMO is the easiest way to put it is almost part-time, but it's a combination of things. It's coming in to help a company who's not quite ready to have a full-time CEO or CMO, or maybe they had a CMO and that person shipped it away, to come in and take a look at what a company is doing for all of their marketing tactics, and are those things working? So when we do fractional CMO work at Soch, it's me typically doing the work, and it might be 10 hours a week, or it might even be like what, like 20 hours a month. And it's really an hourly based piece. Yes, you can do it as a retainer based as well. But I'm going to come in and I'm going to look at every marketing tactic you're doing, compare those to your business goals, and figure out what's working and what's not working, and then give suggestions. And after that first piece is done, sometimes that'll shift and it'll kind of will step back a little bit. Things will get put into motion based on my suggestions. And then maybe a couple months later, we'll come back and we'll review everything and again take a look at what's working, what's not working. And so the idea is that this role allows brands that either right now don't have, a huge amount of money to put towards a salary for a CMO, which can be hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars, and but also lets them level up their marketing efforts, by bringing someone in that has the experience to do the work and to recognize all of the different channels and what should be done and shouldn't be done.
Now, I've had the honor of speaking with a number of fractional executives. However, you're the first fractional executive who also owns an agency or consultancy.
Mhm.
So, how did you go about founding Soch, your digital marketing agency?
Yeah. So Soch is celebrating 25 years this year, which is really awesome for us. And I started as a programmer, and in 1999, my dad owned a small business, and I saw a need for people to help, small businesses develop websites. He'd gotten quotes, and he was, in all honesty, getting fleeced for the cost of building a very simple website. So I saw an opportunity to get out there and help small businesses grow by leveling the playing field, by creating a professional, nice, affordable website. And over time, we evolved, just like all the marketing tactics that we use today evolved. When I started this company, social media wasn't even a thing. We rebranded in 2010 to Soch, so we haven't been always been called Soch. But there's been so many evolutions in marketing, and there's been so much change over the past 25 years that Soch has had to evolve to keep up with the changes. And I'm a big believer in evolve or die. And one of the most recent evolutions has been this fractional role, because I'll have a client or potential client call me and they might think that they need help to redo their website or to run social or digital ads or whatever the case is. And the truth is they don't really know what they need. They think they know what they need, but they don't. And so what I can offer is coming in where there's not a huge commitment, at an hourly rate, and I can sit down and help them identify what they need. And sometimes we can pull, like, sometimes from that work we will actually pull work to do the websites or to do social media, but sometimes I will bring in another agency to do the work depending on what I have going on or what work really needs to be done, and who do I think is good at doing that and getting everything accomplished. And so um what the fractional CMO came from, just another evolution of these tactics, and really me identifying what my clients or potential clients need versus just selling them something that either they think they want or we're good at. So it's not going to do me any good to sell you social media management, which at this point is often brought in house, and I think should be. But if you're not going to see return on investment, it doesn't do me any good to sell you something you don't need. So the reason that we've been able to stay alive for 25 years is that we've constantly been evolving. And fractional CMO work is another evolution of what I can provide to my customers, my clients, that's really going to be beneficial in the long run.
I want to take that just a little bit further. I mean, given the tenure of most senior executives these days, um, do you think that fractional executives? Do you think that's going to be a bigger role? I mean, why hire a CMO, which takes a year basically to get them up and running, or a CEO, which takes 9, 10 months just to do the actual vetting of the? Why not bring somebody in who has the experience at a given stage? Seed stage, early. Your A stage, Series A stage. Why not bring someone in that knows that part of the business, and have them do it, and then move on to someone else as the organization grows and matures.
Yep, absolutely. And I can take that one step further too on the fractional side of things, and why I think there's been a rise in fractional C-level executives. And I think due to economical issues and even COVID, where we saw, remote work being very acceptable. It really not only acceptable as now it's like this the norm, right? And beyond that, tech advances in technology. So you have a combination of things happening on the side of the economy, the technology, and it opens up the door for more fractional work. And so I think there's all sorts of reasons why we're not necessarily seeing just retirement age people stepping into this role. And if I can be a fractional CMO from where I am right now in Utah for a company in New York and a company in LA, which by the way, I do, then that makes my life a little bit easier. They don't need to have the huge investment, both time to find the person, salary and PTO and all the other benefits. And then, if it doesn't work out, you have to find someone else. So we can, it's actually a win-win for a lot of people. And I love it because I can do it from anywhere. I don't have to be in the office all the time.
So the reason I bring that up, and the reason I really, really wanted to talk to you, is because I see fractional CMOs, and I see a lot of similarities between being a fractional executive, no matter what brand or variety you are, and the professional speaking professional. So back in the day, professional speakers, all they wanted to do was speak. And they made their money speaking. They would get together. They would get together and they would put on these shows, and then they would sell this. They would invite people for free, and then they'd sell the books at the back of the room.
Mhm.
But as time went on, the people who were making the money were people who built businesses around their speaking businesses. And that's what I see. I wonder if you see that coming for the fractional world, where fractional executives, no matter what variety, are going to have businesses, and then the fractional work is basically the most premium product or service you provide.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And I don't disagree with it. It's funny that you bring it up because um, I've been talking about working towards this fractional CMO role for a while, a couple of years at least. And um, I do see a lot of companies out there that are just offering like fractional CMO, either training or like placement, almost like a temp agency. But I've been a little bit hesitant to kind of join in on that because I think I think especially when you're talking about a C-level executive, there's a little bit of, you know, you have to have walk the walk before you can talk the talk. And um, I see a lot of opportunity, especially with this agency world that I've been in now for, as long as I have, that this is another service that we can add on. And um, it makes a lot of sense. Kind of goes back to even just helping my dad 25 years ago, where I can help this medium-sized company, small to medium-sized company, to really have a lot of growth just by offering, whether it's 20 to 40 hours a month and they get a similar benefit. So I do think it makes sense that small agencies, whether that's marketing like us, or there's HR agencies or whatever the case is, like to step into a fractional position. And if you think about it, um, what we've been doing, especially for the last 10 years when we kind of really came around to that full service agency, is that level of fractional CMO. We step into that role. And the way for me to best help my customers or my clients would be for me to have a full understanding of the operation. So, the way we've identified our clients that have had the most success is if I can get in and see their sales, and not just like running a social media campaign, but I can actually see their sales month over month, then I can make decisions based on what their goals are that are just specific to one tactic. And so we've been on some level doing a lot of fractional CMO work. We just haven't labeled it fractional CMO work until probably, I think we started labeling it about a year ago, but it's kind of something that we've always really been doing in the back end. If the client allows, they don't always want us to see their sales, their sales information. So
So, Michelle, maybe you can help me out. I believe that AI will force companies to deliver more than just value. They will need to deliver impact. But where I get stuck is explaining the value sits at one end of the spectrum and social entrepreneurship at the other end. And I'm kind of like, and then right in the middle somewhere is social impact and business impact. So how do you explain that to people?
So if you want to think about the business impact, you have to think about the social impact. So we have all sorts of data right now that shows not only your customer, but your potential employee and your potential investor care about your social impact programs and what you're doing. I think it is, I'm pulling up some numbers right now, but about 73% of millennials are willing to pay more for a product or service if they understand your social impact program. We have, here's another 73% of investors say companies work to help people on the planet contributes to their decision to invest. And beyond that, talking about actual direct bottom line impact, um, there's basically a 20% higher revenue right now and a 6% higher market value for companies that have social responsibility programs. And that's just the start. So my kids are Gen Zs. I have a lot of friends who have Gen Alpha kids. These kids, they don't want to work for your company if your company is not stepping in the direction of social impact. And they're certainly not going to buy from your company. And when you then get down to right down to the investors, where they're now really interested in what you're doing, that's a telltale sign that social impact has a direct impact on your bottom line. And the thing I think people are really nervous about with social impact, from what we've experienced, is that what if my social impact program doesn't align and we scare off potential clients? And I say to people about that, one, for most brands, you don't need everyone to believe what you believe. This is a direct tie back to Simon Sinek and start with why. You don't need everyone to believe what you believe. You need to find the people who believe what you believe, and you need to tell them what you believe. And those people, like, bring us right back to the start, end up being advocates for you because they know that you have, you care about your communities, you care about your world, you care about the people that support you. And so communicating your why and your social impact programs is really, really important. On the flip side of it, many people, I'd have to find the exact number here, but it's not about necessarily 100% what you believe. They don't have to agree with what you believe. They have to know that you're courageous enough. They have to understand that you're honest and open enough to actually communicate that. People respect the fact that you're willing to communicate what you believe and the things that you're contributing to as far as social impact far more than they respect the silence. So you're not really losing at all by not only having social impact programs, but also communicating those impact programs. And they don't have to be big. They don't have to be, we just donated $200,000 to whatever charity. They can be something as simple as allowing your employees one day a month to go volunteer at a, you know, charity or whatever of their choice. Like it can be very simple. And then talking about that becomes really important. How you talk about it so that it doesn't sound like you're 100% bragging is important, but that's all part of your messaging. And I think every company needs to look at how is our social impact work being communicated, and then I think you're going to very quickly see ties to the bottom line. And we have a lot of companies out there doing a lot of good things. They're just not doing a good job communicating it. So to me, it's not about the difference between business impact and social impact. It is the same. It is one and the same. And as we move forward and evolve as society and continue down this path, it's going to become even more important, not less important. It's not going away.
Now, you talked some about your kids. So I got to ask, do you teach entrepreneurship at home? I mean, is that a discussion that happens around the dinner table when you guys sit around the dinner table?
Yeah, they know I'm very transparent with my kids, and they've seen the ups and downs. And if you're a small business owner out there like me, 25 years means a lot of ups and it means a lot of downs. It means a lot of key learnings, sometimes a lot of hard lessons. um, and I share that with them. I think teaching entrepreneurship, regardless of whether they will be entrepreneurs, I actually don't think they will, but I think teaching it comes along with a level of teaching critical thinking and thinking outside the box. And, life is a series of hurdles, and how are you going to get around or over or under that hurdle? And to me, all of that is a big part of teaching kids how to live life. They don't have to start their own company. In fact, my daughter's going to school to be an early childhood educator. She wants to teach kids, and I think that's amazing and beautiful. And we need great teachers out there. But if I can give
Educators make the best entrepreneurs.
yeah. Yes, I have a bunch of friends that are educators and entrepreneurs, and I've kind of like poked her a little bit, but I was like, whatever makes you happy, but just having the skills of one, critical thinking, and two, like entrepreneurship is really to me all about, you know, finding, and there's a book called The Third Door, and finding the third door. There's the front door and there's the back door, and how are you going to solve a problem? Critical thinking, problem solving skills. These are all super important skills for everyone to have. And I think that whether or not they start their own company, I might have frightened them away because they've seen the hurdles and the challenges, but they see the blessings that come along with it as well. So we'll see. We'll see.
Okay, I got to warn you. On this podcast, we talk about fire givers, and we talk about podcasters as fire givers and their guests as catalysts that fan the flame and make things happen. So as a catalyst and guest fire giver, what are you most passionate about? And what skills and tools do you want to hand down to the next generation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, um, and you talk about the existential bubble, and you get to an age in life. I don't know if it's an age or maturity or what happens where you start to have these questions that pop up of, what is my purpose? How am I giving back? Um, I went through that a little bit last year and the year before, and I'm in advertising, so that can be somewhat sometimes of a soulless industry. Um, and so I went through this whole process of what do I want to do with the rest of my life, and that's where a lot of the social impact work came from, because I have a skill set of being able to put messaging out in a way that people understand and relate. And to me, using that skill set to help others, to help our communities locally and nationally and around the world, really jumped out to me as like something that I feel really passionate about, and I feel like we really all should be doing. I tell this story where I moved to this small town in Utah, and there's 750 people in my town, but we have other communities around us, and so there's these Facebook platforms or Facebook channels for each community. And when I first started working in social media, I loved it because it was this back and forth and give and take, and we could have communicate, like we could have conversations with people we'd never met, and it seemed so beautiful. And it then turned into something so damaging. And now I look at these platforms here, and I'll see people post, I lost my job today, and I'm struggling to get food on the table. Can somebody help? Like, they're not asking for money, they're asking for food. Like, and these small communities just jump. I get chills talking about it. They jump on, and there's like 80 comments going, yeah, I've got extra pizzas in my refrigerator. I just made extra food. I can drop it off at your house. And I like, it's such a beautiful thing to see this happen organically and naturally, where people are taking care of each other in their communities, not just their families. And I feel a strong drive to see if we can scale that up. How do we take this tool that was given to us and turn it into something that can help, really, really help our communities? And to me, that's like what I want to teach my kids, and I want to teach future generations, is like, we're here to take care of each other. It's not about just taking from each other, it's taking care of each other. That's where we feel good. And so as I start to evolve and go into the next evolution of Soch, that's why the social impact piece seemed to be really important to me. And I think I've raised two kids. My son's in cybersecurity, and he's very much about, helping people online who are getting fleeced and scammed and everything. And I think that's to me the most important thing. The next evolution of humanity comes by taking care of each other. We need to kind of get back to that point. And that doesn't necessarily mean I'm writing you a check or I'm giving you money. It means I'm making sure you're okay. And gosh, if we just had a little bit more of that, wouldn't life be a lot easier?
So, as we wrap up, Michelle, is there anything you wish more people would ask you?
um, I think, well, I'd love another topic we actually haven't talked about that I'm also very passionate about is Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. And I don't know if you know who Joseph Campbell is, but um, he basically coined the phrase or the term, the hero's journey. And if you know what the hero's journey is, you'll start to recognize it in every book and in every movie you've ever seen in your life. So the hero's journey is actually a circle. It starts with you're in your regular day-to-day life, and something happens that is a catalyst for change. Oftentimes that is something negative, because it's usually something negative that pushes you to change. And this happens, and it's like a catalyst, and you have to make a change. You don't have a choice. And then you go through this, he calls it a dark tunnel. And during that time, you meet people who help you, and people who hurt you, and you have a key learning. And you come out of the dark tunnel with a new strength. And then to finish the circle, you come back and you tell your stories. And if you know this, it's basically an algorithm. If you know it, you'll start to recognize it. The Marvel movies do it so well. Star Wars is such a great hero's journey story, where, like, if you're a Star Wars fan, like Luke, he comes back to his home when he's been called to adventure, right? And then he comes back to his home, and his house is burned down. Like, he has to take the call to adventure. Another great one is Frozen 2, actually, if you're a Disney fan. Frozen 2, where she's literally in a dark tunnel. The girl is literally in a dark tunnel and trying to figure out her way. And there's this whole song about taking steps to just one step at a time to get to the light. And I have been through many hero's journeys, as we all have. Some of them are big and some of them are small. And I think the thing that I would like people to ask me about and talk to me about is, how do you get through the hero, or how do you get through the dark tunnel? Um, and I think it's something that a lot of people are nervous to talk about because people are afraid to say they're in a dark tunnel because that might be embarrassing. Dark tunnel could be depression. It could be all sorts of terrible things that happen to you, and people are nervous about talking about it. So, and I've been through many, many dark tunnels.
So, how do you get through the dark tunnel?
So how do I get through the dark tunnel? I actually just posted about it today because I'm actually working my way out of a dark tunnel at the moment, and it's step by step. Really, what you do is you you get up every day and try to make a little bit of progress, regardless of what the dark tunnel is. Um, you make a little bit of a step out of it. You try to find one thing to do. So for some people, if they're really really struggling, I'm blessed to never have been into this dark of a tunnel, but where you're really even struggling to just, some people are struggling to get out of bed. Um, what is the one thing you can do that will make you feel good? Does that go for a walk? Does that make your bed? Does that brush your teeth? Just small things. For me, it's right now it's about bringing on clients. So how do we bring on a client bit by bit? We've had to rebuild this company many times. And I think part of it too is leaning on a few people, having some friends that you can talk to, um, and holding yourself accountable is a huge thing, so that you don't allow yourself to kind of go down the path of negative thoughts. But to me, the biggest thing is just make a little bit of progress. Set a goal for tomorrow that says, I'm going to do this one thing. And if I do this one thing, it'll be a step in the right direction. And then the next
And the
day,
days of
another step.
success.
Yes. And another step and another step. And then you look back and you look up a year, look back a year and you're like amazed. And Benjamin Hardy is this great organizational psychologist, and he talks about being your future self now and looking 10 years ahead. And it's so hard to look 10 years ahead because you cannot possibly imagine what that looks like. But if you look 10 years back and you see how different you are today, then it's a lot easier. So it's really just these baby steps and just trying to keep up with those baby steps and just doing a little thing every day, and it compounds. And that's it. Yeah.
Michelle, thank you for joining us on the Subscription Maker Impact.
Thank you for having me. This has been wonderful. I appreciate your time.
Before we wrap, too many people work way too hard and earn too little from their online businesses. You don't have to be one of them. And that's a wrap.